Interpreting distance time graphs. Each graph below represents one segment of Mrs. Kadai's drive to work today. Describe her movement on each segment using appropriate terminology with respect to her journey, such as towards, away from, not moving, constant speed, speeding up, and slowing down. Your dependent variable is your distance, and it represents her distance from home. Let's highlight a few things. What are the key things we're asked to do? We're asked to describe each segment, and we're going to use the words towards, away from, not moving, constant speed, speeding up, slowing down. And the key thing here we're being asked to do is to describe each segment. So we need to be aware of that. Oops, I ended up being in the wrong spot. So let's look at the first segment down here. The distance is getting larger, it's moving away, so it represents motion away from. The other thing we can see is that it's constant motion because the distance changes the same amount over every second. The next segment, also the distance is increasing, so it also indicates she's moving away. And if you look, it doesn't occur at a constant speed. As we start out slowly changing our distance, and then we are changing our distance at a much faster rate. So that would tell us that we were speeding up. In the next section, we see a horizontal line. That's telling us that the distance isn't changing, which would indicate that we are not moving or we're standing still. The next graph, we start out decreasing slowly and then increase at a faster rate. And we're moving towards the sensor or towards home because the distance is decreasing, but we're still speeding up because it's decreasing at a faster pace towards the end. And the last one shows motion towards, and it's also at a constant speed because it's a straight line. The first segment could indicate that she's just left home possibly, and she's just started to record her distance from home, a few kilometers away from home. She's moving towards the school. She might have realized she's a little bit late and is speeding up as she moves from home. Oops. It could also be her accelerating out of her driveway at a faster speed. The next segment right here could be her stopping at a traffic light. Could also be a stop in the Tim Hortons drive-thru. The next segment could be the person realizing they forgot something at home, for instance, their lunch, and they're turning around and speeding up as they go towards their house so that they're not late for work. And then, of course, if we look at the last graph, it could indicate that the person realized they've reached the maximum speed limit and they're staying at that constant speed until they get back to their house. The two graphs shown below represent Divya's walk to class from her locker on 2 different days. Which graph matches the story below? Once we figure out which graph matches, we're going to write a story for the other graph. Now let's look at our story. She started to walk, increasing her speed. She forgot her notebook, so she went back to her locker at a non-constant speed, got her notebook, and then went quickly to class at a constant speed. So we need to think about what these things tell us. Increasing her speed means it's not going to be a line. It's nonlinear. At a non-constant speed, well, that will also be nonlinear. And quickly means it's going to be a steep line, or steep, and constant speed means it's going to be a line. So if we look at those, pause the video, decide which one you think that applies to. Only one of them can match because only one of them has differing speeds. And that, of course, is this graph right here. Now, if we look at the other graph, we know it's all straight lines, which means constant speeds. So if we look at the first segment right here, that tells us the distance is increasing, so she's walking away from her locker. And it's straight, so it's at a constant speed. Horizontal line tells us she's standing still, so possibly she stopped to chat with a friend. If I look at the third segment, it's a little bit steeper than this first segment was, so obviously she's walking at a faster pace. That could be Divya realizing she's late for class and she needs to move faster in order to get there. So if you go back to the story, take a look at each segment. The first story, her distance from her locker is increasing quickly. So she's speeding up and the graph will curve upwards. The distance from her locker is increasing at a constant rate right here. And in this section here, her distance from her locker is decreasing quickly. So she's speeding up and the graph curves down quickly. And we've already got it. What I would suggest when you write stories is deal with each segment individually. So label them either 1, 2, and 3 or A, B, and C. So we talk about what's occurring at each interval, moving away at a constant speed, no movement, standing still, moving away from the point of reference at a faster constant speed, and then incorporate your story. So she leaves her locker walking at a constant speed to math class. She sees Shrishti and stops to talk for a while. Then she realizes she's late for math, so she walks at a faster constant speed to class.